Bonjour tout le monde. Hi. I'm super excited for what's to come next with the pitches. I'm just your warm-up. They're going to pump you up with energy. Wait until you see them. So I'm David Nault. I'm co-founder and general partner of Luge Capital, a new $75 million fintech fund launched here in Montreal, Toronto, investing everywhere in North America. Our investors are Desjardins, CDPQ, Sun Life, La Capitale, and did I forget one? Sun Life, La Capitale, Le Fonds FTQ, Desjardins. And so, you know, much like an Olympic athlete trying to get their place on the podium, for an entrepreneur to succeed, they have to go extremely quickly, they have to accept risk, and they need a lot of resources around them to succeed. And so, as a fund that looks at what resources are available, we put together a little presentation to share with you the status of the fintech landscape. In Canada, we're seeing about 600 companies. Proportionally speaking, in the US, there's about 4,000 and about 1,600 in the UK. My speaker notes are not moving, so I'm going to wing it. The fintech funding landscape in Canada, hockey stick, which I refer to as the CB Insights of Canada or the Bloomberg of Canada, just only maybe a bit better. They've got tons of data, and they put together a little bit of a map out here. You know, it's no surprise that about 60% of the companies that we're seeing are in Ontario, with about 65% of the money that have been put into those companies, with Quebec and British Columbia at about 20% of capital and 20% of the companies out there. And we're seeing a lot more momentum now in Quebec with a number of different initiatives, the Holt Accelerator, Forum FinTech, the Coopératon by Desjardins, and the creation of fintechs there, and a couple of other initiatives, including the new fintech station, which is going to be launched with Finance Montréal in the next couple of months. Every year we're seeing more and more fintech started, and we think this is super encouraging. About 100 will be created this year, and the top verticals are payments, blockchain, and lending. We're seeing a lot of new lending algorithms coming out that are being developed, and the little arrow up is worldwide what we're seeing in terms of companies and verticals which are growing significantly. In Canada, we have about 600 million which will be invested into early stage companies. And kind of interesting, we're already at about 500 million, but interestingly, last year, about half of that money went into 3 companies. So we don't have any major outliers, but we'll see a growth in the investment. So a lot more earlier stage companies are going to be invested in. In the United States, there's about 20 times more money which will be invested in early stage companies, at about $10 billion. The Canadian fintech investments will reach about since 2014, 1.7 billion has been invested on the left there. Out of 170 companies, the vast majority of those companies were pre-seed and seed. Like you'll see that the pitch competition, we got a lot of early stage companies that are starting up. But in terms of money that has gone into those companies, the more money has gone into a little bit of the later stage companies than the earlier ones, which only got about 10% of that $1.7 billion. A welcome piece of the ecosystem has been fintech-focused funds that bring a network, bring experience to help the entrepreneurs grow. I don't know if you saw this morning, but Portage announced almost $200 million of additional money going into their fund. This year launched also was us, Luge Capital, and Framework Venture Partners, a spin-off of the BDC started by Peter Mizek. And that's not to say that the rest of them don't invest in fintech. They do. We did our first deal with Panache, but Inovia, White Star, Real Ventures, they all invest in fintech as well, just not focused on them. And the total capital there, pool available, is about $4 billion. We're seeing some great companies that are gaining more and more momentum, raising bigger and bigger rounds. This is just a sample of them, but companies that are gaining great traction. In terms of the M&A space, if you guys were there during lunch, Paul Desmarais talked about unicorns. We have no unicorns in Canada. It takes time to build these companies, just like it takes time for an athlete to reach the podium and get the gold. But these are some examples of companies that have still had interesting, good exits that then come back and fuel back the ecosystem even further with talent, with resources, angel money, and experience. My partner actually worked on three of these deals when he was at PayPal. In terms of FIs, what's really interesting is how they're partnering with early stage companies and doing so from the street level, where it's a lot easier to enter into dialogue with the financial institutions. Desjardins with a new initiative, CyberEco, all for security. You have Banque Nationale Ventures, CIBC, all the major FIs are either opening up labs, sandboxes, or ways in which to work with early stage companies. And some of those partnerships, I won't list them all, but they're up here. And only 10 years ago, I remember being in a startup and not one FI would partner with us. Like, partner with a startup? What happens if you fail? But I think now we're really seeing them come up and want to work with early stage innovation. And so we're encouraged by that. A couple of Montreal companies also out here. So finally, in the past 2 years, we've seen more mission-led organizations that work tirelessly to stimulate the growth of fintechs by supporting them and giving them places to unite, learn, and collaborate. A special shout out to the Forum FinTech for putting this together. We get a standing room only in the back, and this puts the early stage companies on the podium to be seen so that people can then go and partner, invest in them, or even join them. So finally, just a quick wrap up. After speaking to some early stage companies and different players of the ecosystem, what do we think that needs to happen to up our game? And in terms of financing, there's more and more companies that are started every single year. And with more funding needed, there's more funding needed for those companies, especially growth capital. It's super hard to raise money without proof points. And so incentives to help early stage risk takers, angels, we think would be a welcome part of the whole ecosystem. In terms of regulation, regulatory bodies are working really hard to enable fintechs rather than slow them down. However, finding more ways to converge regulation amongst jurisdictions would save companies a lot of time and help them grow. In August 2018, there was an initiative worldwide for different regulatory bodies to work together to try to create a framework that would help these early stage companies. And in terms of collaboration, how can we have a national hub strategy to help these companies and these different initiatives collaborate all together? A lot of the startups that we talk to need access to customers, access to partners, and that's their biggest challenge. They're young, they don't necessarily have the network. How can we help them expand abroad? How can we help them connect them? If you have the ability to connect up a startup, please do. It helps them tremendously. And then finally, in terms of talent, we have talent that comes in to incubators here, comes into universities, and how do we keep them here? Canada is a great place to start a company and start local and then grow global from here. The other thing is that you have super large companies that get these great incentives to come in here and to establish themselves. However, that's also a challenge for early stage companies, and those tax breaks that those large companies get makes it very difficult for early stage companies to attract that talent. So offering incentives to early stage companies to be able to compete for that talent is essential. So make sure you stick around afterwards. The pitch competition, I'm going to come back up and we're going to give a live offer to a company, an investment offer to a company up here that we'll be pitching today. Thank you very much. Merci, and thank you very much to our partners who helped put together this presentation, EY, Hockey Stick, and the data providers, AngelList, CB Insights, and Crunchbase. Thank you.